Hello everyone, welcome back to Exploder. Here we are, another week, another episode. I would try to say it like another day, another dollar, but it doesn't sound as cool. Whatever. This episode, I want to talk about celebrities in professional wrestling. Celebrities in pro wrestling have played a role all the way back to basically the creation of wrestling. Back in the day, there were performers like the Manassas Mauler, Jack Dempsey, world boxing champion, Babe Ruth, all of which were considered at equal levels of world champions like Ed Strangler Lewis, Joe Stecker, and the like. Now, I'm not going to go back that far. I'm not even going to go back to the 50s when you had TV actors and characters referring to wrestling events. I'm going to talk about what I normally talk about from the 80s until now, the role of celebrities in professional wrestling. Now, when you talk about celebrities and their connection to wrestling, you cannot ignore the biggest one, the rock and wrestling connection from the 1980s, including Cyndi Lauper, who brought Captain Lou Albano on to play her father in a music video, and eventually would come in for an MTV event, would be there with her manager, David Wolf. She would become a manager. She would play a role in this, and it was the beginning. Now, of course, the rock and wrestling era also led to the cartoon and things like that, but at the time, wrestling was the biggest thing in the 80s. So being a huge thing in the 80s, of course, you were going to combine Hulk Hogan and Cyndi Lauper and cartoons and Ronald Reagan and all that stuff. That was the 80s in a nutshell. Another part of it was Mr. T. Mr. T appeared as a tag team partner of Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 1, teaming up with him against Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff, and that was the beginning of it. And then he'd appear the next year as in a boxing match for some reason. Rocky, we know why, but as a boxing match against Roddy Piper, that probably the only boxing match ever ended by being hit with a stool, so that's a thing. Mr. T would actually play a role in wrestling later on. In 1994's Halloween Havoc, he would be in the corner of Hulk Hogan when he faced Ric Flair in a cage match. So that was, he's been in there at this point a few times, and of course was put into the WWE Hall of Fame years later. This is the guy who worked at 2 WrestleManias and was not a wrestler. So that's saying something. The famous one, of course, is Andy Kaufman. Outside the WWF umbrella, Andy Kaufman with his famous angle against Jerry Lawler, what even went on to David Letterman's show, and Jerry Lawler slapped Andy Kaufman in a thing that at the time only a few people knew what was going on. It looked real. It was the 80s. It was kayfabe. But this is something where years later they made a movie about it. It involved Jimmy Hart, not the movie because politics, but the angle involved Jimmy Hart and Jerry Lawler and Andy Kaufman and Bob Zamuda. It was pro wrestling with a celebrity, a legitimate angle done in Memphis, and it was really revolutionary for its time, and it was a legitimate angle. It wasn't a guy showing up once and collecting a paycheck. It was a real angle, so that was really interesting. Speaking of celebrities in wrestling, you can't speak of that without talking about WrestleMania. Yes, WrestleMania has been, for the most part, a big combination of Hollywood and wrestling. It has been since day one. WrestleMania 1 included, among others, I'm not going to give a full list because I really don't care, but New York Yankee Billy Martin was there doing ring announcing. Liberace and the Rockettes, because it's New York. Mr. T, of course. And that was just WrestleMania 1. And there were others. There were, guest timekeepers. Guest timekeepers are the people that, to me, it was always like, all they did was ring the bell. They were the guest timekeeper. To me, guest timekeepers said, we want you to be involved. We want to attach ourselves to your name, but we don't know what the hell to do with you, and we're afraid you'll mess something up. So all you have to do is take a hammer and hit a bell 3 times, and you've done your job. So a guest timekeeper, they're there, they're guests, whatever. Then, of course, WrestleMania 2, Mr. T and Roddy Piper in the boxing match, as I mentioned. Then there's some of the less than, 80s. Let's say 80s. Let's just say it was 80s, and it was very 80s. 1986, they had Clara Peller. If you don't know who that is, you're lucky. She was the Where's the Beef lady, the old lady who asked, where's the beef? Because it was the 80s. And if you don't know who that is, if you're still not sure about that, wake up your parents and ask them if their grandparents ever told them stories. There was the NFL Battle Royal. WWF superstars, including John Studd, among others, including Andre the Giant, Jim Neidhart, Bret Hart, so on and so forth, and NFL players like Refrigerator Perry, who got himself into the Hall of Fame from that one appearance, so don't laugh at it. There were a lot of others. And then it started getting weird. For the boxing match, I found this one out. One of the ringside judges was G. Gordon Liddy. Now, if you don't know who G. Gordon Liddy is, G. Gordon Liddy was one of the people that worked for Richard Nixon. He's also one of the people that went to prison for breaking into the Watergate Hotel. So he went from the White House to prison to being a judge for the Mr. T. Roddy Piper boxing match at WrestleMania 2. Is that a lateral move? I'm not quite sure. And so on and so forth. They would always have somebody at WrestleMania singing the national anthem, or America the Beautiful. My apologies. America the Beautiful, except in 1990 when they went to Canada and they had Robert Goulet sing "O Canada" because you are legally required to do that. I assume. I don't know how it works there, but I'm pretty sure Robert Goulet is like on their money at this point. Then in the early 90s, this one's a weird one because in the early 90s, wrestling started started taking a slump. It started going into a slump, and they started getting celebrities that weren't necessarily the biggest celebrities. So instead of getting Cyndi Lauper, they started getting not Cyndi Lauper. I don't know how to put it. Like in 1990, for a match on Saturday Night's Main Event between Hulk Hogan and Macho King Randy Savage, the referee was going to be Mike Tyson, who at the time was the boxing champion of the world and a longtime wrestling fan, as we find out later. Right before this match is supposed to take place, Mike Tyson loses a match with what many consider to be a fluke, all, to a guy named James Buster Douglas. So Mike Tyson loses in his fluke loss to Buster Douglas, a guy who no one really knew who he was and was considered to be like a steamroll match for Tyson. So the WWE decides, screw it. So they sign Buster Douglas to be the referee. So this uncharismatic, I don't want to say jobber, because he was boxing champion of the world for, 6 minutes, but they brought Buster Douglas in, and it was okay, and it was sort of different, but it wasn't Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was there. Mike Tyson would come in years later, and I'll get to that, but at this time, it was Buster Douglas, so meh. Then, of course, there's football great Art Donovan and his commentary at King of the Ring 1994.
How much does that guy weigh?
If you have not heard this commentary, if you have the WWE Network, they don't pay me, I'm not shilling for them, I only have enough listeners to be in a potential place to shill, so just calm down. But I'm just being honest with you, if you have the WWE Network, or you know of an old VHS copy or whatever, watch King of the Ring 94, if for nothing else, than to hear Art Donovan commentary. It is the greatest thing you'll ever hear in your life. This guy has no concept of what's going on in the show. I don't know why he's there, and honestly, I don't think he knows why he's there. Through the whole show, he asked how much guys weigh, literally during a match between, I believe it was Mabel and IRS. During the match, he asked Gorilla Monsoon, who's the guy in the white shirt? The guy in the white shirt, who'd been introduced, who's been in the ring for a few minutes now, is IRS. I'm not saying he has to know what IRS stands for, but he at least heard the name once. He doesn't know who's in the ring at the moment. That's the kind of commentary you were getting from Art Donovan. So sometimes that was the quality of talent, celebrity that you were getting in the WWF as they were sort of in their slump. Then, of course, there was Leslie Nielsen leading into SummerSlam 1994. Undertaker versus Undertaker. The original Undertaker disappeared in January of 94 at the Royal Rumble, and they brought in Leslie Nielsen to do basically what he did on his movies, where he was looking for the Undertaker and being sort of this bumbling, stumbling investigator, no other way to put it. And they were gimmicky and they were hokey, but it fit the time. It really fit the time. It was 1994. The WWE was still working with clowns and garbage men and guys whose whole gimmick was playing the guitar, and they had a few of those, and a guy who wanted to be a country singer, and they were doing a lot of gimmicks like that. So Leslie Nielsen looking for the Undertaker really is not the weirdest thing they probably did that year. So, Then they brought in NFL greats like Walter Payton to be in someone's corner during a match, and famously Shawn Michaels talked about how he decided he was going to run around the ring and Walter Payton couldn't catch him. Yes, Walter Payton could not catch Shawn Michaels. Bull. Yeah, he caught him, just so you know. Musician Tiny Tim was there for a King's Court segment. I don't know why, but he was. I don't know. The funniest one has to be, and this is a little bit before, so this is a little out of place, but I had to get this in. Adam West, Batman, appeared as Batman in Memphis during the 80s to defend against Jerry Lawler, who was dressed as Superman. Again, I couldn't make this up. I'm going to put up a video of it later today. You're going to see what I'm talking about. It is the weirdest thing. It's a celebrity, but he's playing a character that he played on TV like 20 years ago. It's weird. There's no other way to put it. It was weird, but watch the video. It's funny in its own way.
I didn't want anyone to recognize me. But there is a rumor that Mr. Freeze and Penguin are here in Memphis because of the radical change in the weather, and that they have a hookup with the evil king of Memphis, who just might be wrestling here this morning.
Wait a minute.
Do you know who this is? Is that who I think it is? Yes, it is. What is this?
Well, what does it look like? Tell me, what does it look like? I heard he was going to be here today, so I dressed appropriately. That's what it is, the Super King. What else?
Okay, you say maybe you're going to be able to give us some help with this guy here. You're on the case, and I think we're going to need all the help we can get with the King.
Well, now, I've heard he's had his troubles with the Joker and the Penguin and Mr. Freeze, but he hadn't handled the King yet. And I got somebody in a box that I'm going to bring out here in just a few minutes that'll make a Joker look like Mickey Mouse, I can tell you that.
I've heard about your box, but I want to say that that costume that you're wearing, if you are indeed the evil king of Memphis, has been stolen from a friend of mine, Soup. Superman, I call him Soup.
Right.
And I think that Spider-Man, Spidey Baby, would probably object too. By the way, looking at you, I don't think it's too late for you. I think that possibly, if you changed some of your habits, some of your methods of wrestling, if you used your left and right turn indicator in your car, did other things that people normally do when they're polite and courteous, and you weren't such a naughty, mean person, it wouldn't be too late for you.
And I can see that you're not familiar with these rednecks that we have around here.
Rednecks?
That's exactly right. That's right.
I tell you what, gentlemen,
They
I
look
think...
like splendid people to me, and they're Bat fans. I know they are. And I think it's insulting to call them rednecks.
I think maybe we better settle this elsewhere. And again, both of
I
you are
got to
going to
get
be
Dr.
at
Frank in here anyway.
both of you are going to be down at the Cook Convention Center at the car show all
Yes,
this
we
weekend,
are.
and maybe you can settle it there. Badman, appreciate you coming by, and
Thank you very
Jimmy,
much.
hope you can
He's
give
not
us
a nice
with a
man,
king
is
here.
Then, of course, we get to WrestleMania 10. WrestleMania 10 had its collection of celebrities, I guess. First of all, the late Burt Reynolds, who, of course, wasn't dead there, but in 1994, but, you know, you couldn't tell from his acting. Burt Reynolds didn't want to be there. He had hurt his hand or something, so he has like a cast on. And he's doing ring announcing for the match. He doesn't care. This guy's like, I've seen some of the movies he's done in his, like, later on in his career, and he cared more about the volleyball film or whatever it was called than he cared about this. Lonnie Anderson in 1994, you know, Rhonda Shear, who's Rhonda Shear? She hosts a show on USA or something. I don't care to look it up. And Cy Sperling, who was the president and founder of Hair Club for Men. You know, the one that you spray painted hair on your head? That was the most 90s thing ever. Yeah, he was there. He gave Howard Finkel a wig or something. Donnie Wahlberg from New Kids on the Block. Yeah, that was WrestleMania 10 in a nutshell. It was just these random, weird celebrities. I don't know why any of them were there, and honestly, I don't think they did either. But WrestleMania 11 comes along. Now you're getting into peak 90s. 1995, one of the worst WrestleManias of all time, and I'll get to why. Jonathan Taylor Thomas from Home Improvement, who had a bowl cut. There's no other way around it. Nicholas Turturro from NYPD Blue. Again, probably the most 90s thing I've ever said in my life. Pamela Anderson, a couple of years from a sex tape, and a couple more years away from hepatitis C, so she's still pretty good. And Jenny McCarthy, a couple years away from losing her damn mind. Umpire Larry Young, for some reason. Don't know why. And of course, the main event, for some reason, Lawrence Taylor. Lawrence Taylor, who had retired from the New York Giants, who, pretty well known at this time, had a penchant for cocaine, was in the main event against Bam Bam Bigelow in what can only be called a match, and where Bam Bam Bigelow carried Lawrence Taylor to a god-awful match. Like, it followed Shawn Michaels vs. Diesel in, quite frankly, not one of their best matches, and Lawrence Taylor and Bam Bam was actually worse. The only thing that saved it was that WWE sold a shit ton of merchandise for it. Salt and Peppa played him to the ring with What a Man. It was more of the spectacle, but the match itself was god-awful, and Lawrence Taylor went for a powerbomb and fell down himself, and he won with a diving forearm from the middle rope in what can only be described as Then in the mid-90s, things got popular once again. Now, as the Attitude Era is in full swing, they start getting more celebrities that are actually pretty cool. The least of which, in my opinion, were the celebrities who sat in the crowd. Now, it's not particularly that they sat in the crowd. There were a lot of wrestlers and a lot of people that sat in the crowd and would watch the show every time you're in town. If you're in Baltimore, sometimes the Baltimore Ravens will be there, and they're fans, but outside of a major quarterback or a running back or a linebacker, it's the defensive line of the Ravens, and unless you're a huge fan of the Ravens, you don't give a crap. So it's not necessarily who it is, but it was the fact that professional wrestling was popular at this time. It was very popular, and it was so popular at that point that people were willing to be seen watching it. They were willing to be on TV appearing as wrestling fans, and that's one thing that when wrestling was sort of in the dump in the early 90s, 93, 94, you couldn't pay them to sit in the front row because it was just not cool. By the time Steve Austin and DX and The Rock come along, everyone and their mother wanted to be in the front row. Ben Stiller took a guitar shot from Jeff Jarrett. That's how popular wrestling was back then. That's only happens when wrestling's really popular. Pete Rose has appeared for WWE numerous times, and each time he keeps getting beat up by a future mayor from Tennessee. Wonder what happened to that guy. Then, of course, Mike Tyson finally makes his wrestling debut. In 1997, he appears as the baddest man on the planet immediately after biting off the ear, or part of the ear, of Evander Holyfield, because WB likes him that way. He appears in the ring with Stone Cold Steve Austin, who famously flips him off, and they have a shoving match, and apparently a wad of $100 bills falls out of Mike Tyson's pocket, because that's how he rolled back then. And so as they're separating them, his entourage are picking up the money. He would then join DX and be a special outside enforcer for the famous Shawn Michaels Steve Austin match from WrestleMania 14, in which he would end by punching Shawn Michaels in the face and revealing a Steve Austin t-shirt this whole time. He got us. He would appear a few more times over the years, and of course would be in the Hall of Fame. And one of the few guys that honestly, I'm not upset about him being in the Hall of Fame. Honestly, he shouldn't even be in the Celebrity Hall of Fame. He should be in the regular one, because he's done quite a bit, and he's a big fan. And honestly, he's the one celebrity I think WWE's ever had that showed up that you're like, yeah, he could probably still take the guys. Like, he's not a wrestler, but he can do it. He can do it. WCW had their fair share of celebrities. They did it a little differently, including Dennis Rodman, who appeared alongside Hulk Hogan in 1995. I believe it was Bash at the Beach. And then later, numerous times as a full-fledged member of the NWO. He even missed a practice for the NBA Finals to show up on Nitro unannounced. They were in finals against Karl Malone and the Utah Jazz. They had a practice on a Monday morning or Monday afternoon. He didn't show up to that. They didn't know where he was. He shows up, pulls in the limo, and he's with the NWO. That's how much Rodman, either A, that's how much of a sociopath he was, or B, that's how much he loved wrestling. He was willing to potentially get fired during the finals to show up and smoke a cigar with Hulk Hogan. Karl Malone, of course, worked against him. Karl Malone and Diamond Dallas Page versus Hollywood Hogan and Dennis Rodman. Bash at the Beach 1998. And Rodman came back in 1999 to work an angle with Macho Man Randy Savage, where he famously kidnapped Gorgeous George. WCW 1999, people. He would then even later have a match with Kurt Hennig in Australia, completely independent, not WE, not WCW, none of it. So that's Dennis Rodman. That's another guy who, he's a weird person. He's a weird guy. This guy, when he was playing for the Bulls, put the Bulls logo colors in his hair. He had a red background and a black bull head. That's the kind of guy this guy did a book signing in a wedding dress. If there's anyone made for professional wrestling, it's Dennis freaking Rodman. But yeah, so he appeared. And of course, you can't mention professional wrestling, you can't mention WCW celebrities without mentioning Jay Leno. Jay Leno, former host of The Tonight Show, the guy whose chin has its own zip code, teamed with Diamond Dallas Page to face Hollywood Hogan and Eric Bischoff at Road Wild 1998. Famously, the picture of Jay Leno having Hulk Hogan in an armbar. One probably gave Jim Cornette an aneurysm. Sorry to harp on Jim Cornette again, but here we are. And it got on the newspapers. It was a celebrity doing these things. It was a main event. Was the greatest thing ever? No, but it got WCW press, and that was the point. So if you have a guy who has a network show and he's the head of the Tonight Show and he's in the ring for 12 minutes with your biggest star and, you know, his boss buddy, you're gonna get press for it, and that was the whole point. As I mentioned in a previous episode, James Brown made a surprise, and I mean surprise, appearance at WCW Super Brawl 2000 in a dreadful segment between the Maestro, you remember him, no you don't, and Ernest the Cat Miller. Basically, he was there to promote his new album, but, you know, he showed up, so, David Arquette was the WCW World Champion. There's nothing more I can say to that hasn't been said. Moving on, WCW actually had professional football players wrestle. Now, of course, we're talking about Steve McMichael, who played for the Chicago Bears, who retired, did a bunch of things, became an announcer for WCW, who, by the way, was on Lawrence Taylor's All-Pro team at WrestleMania 11, which not many people think about. He was on WWF programming first for that one match, goes to WCW as an announcer with this little frickin' dog, and then becomes a pro wrestler, teaming with Kevin Green, turns on Kevin Green, hits him with the briefcase, and him and his wife Deborah join the Horsemen. And not being a great wrestler by any stretch of the imagination. Like, I'm pretty sure the Great Khali's stool sample was a better wrestler than Steve McMichael. There's no way around that. Steve McMichael was not a great wrestler, but he had a great personality. He had that flamboyant character about him, and he lasted. That's why he lasted as long as he did. 1996, he was there two and a half years. He even did a little program with Goldberg when Goldberg was on the rise. So, you know, he did all right for what it was. Kevin Green actually would wrestle numerous matches. One time, he would wrestle in the Carolinas. Him, Ric Flair, and Roddy Piper would go against Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and Six Pac, or Six, or whatever the hell, name number 7. They had a 6-man tag at Slamboree. Kevin Green held his own, and he did well. Reggie White, even, from the Green Bay Packers, came in and did a match with Steve McMichael. So now there's a guy who's been wrestling for a couple years, a guy who never wrestled before. So WCW would bring in NFL players and sort of integrate them, and then outside of a couple of them, outside of like Kevin Green with the Slamboree match, which works because it was the Carolinas, and he played for the Carolina Panthers, and it worked out. They'd bring him in, but they'd sort of mix him into the middle. I mean, Reggie White wasn't going to main event a pay-per-view, and nor should he, but they worked him in pretty well. And then they also did weird things like Man Cow. Man Cow is a DJ, a radio DJ named Man Cow. He wrestled manager Jimmy Hart in a match on a pay-per-view for some reason, because WCW did stuff like that. Why? I have no earthly idea. Rap mogul Master P came to WCW and started his own group called the No Limit Soldiers. They immediately put them against the Texas Rednecks, a team of Kurt Hennig, Bobby Duncombe Jr., Barry and Kendall Windham, and later Curly Bill, which was Virgil and gimmick number, who cares. The rappers, who primarily were performing in southern states, WCW Stronghold, were portrayed as the baby faces. Yeah, that didn't work as well as you might think there. As a matter of fact, Rap is Crap, the song for the West Texas Rednecks, got radio play in certain parts. Like a wrestling song got radio play in certain parts of the country.
And it goes like this right here. A 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. I like country music. I love country girls. I like Willie Nelson. And don't forget about Merle. There's only one thing that I hate, 'cause it's a bunch of crap. I hate rap. I like NASCAR racing, Richard Petty's still the king. Yeah, they call me a redneck, but you know that's a beautiful thing.
And they were supposed to be the heels. It didn't last. The angle didn't last. Master P didn't last, and he got the hell out of there. But hey, at least he got to have an in-ring birthday party for his brother for some damn reason. Bischoff. Mad TV star Will Sasso did an actual angle with Bret Hart that happened across both Mad TV and WCW Nitro. This included the time Deborah Wilson turned on Sasso during a match he had with Hart on Nitro. Then another episode of Mad TV, Rowdy Roddy Piper came through the crowd and helped Sasso and Deborah Wilson get back together. Now, what was the point? I don't know. I mean, it was different, whether it was good or not. I mean, it was just, to me, it was just another one of those things that WCW did with Bret Hart that showed they had no idea what they were doing with Bret Hart, but it was different, so yay. ECW had celebrities, but they also had the less seemly types, because ECW was grungy, it was dirty, it was the kind of promotion where if it was a real thing, you would need a hepatitis shot. This includes an appearance by Divine Brown. If you don't know who Divine Brown is, which most people don't, she was the hooker that Hugh Grant got busted with in 1995 on Sunset Boulevard. Raven, Stevie Richards brought her in, Raven turned her down because, as far as he said, she wasn't sleazy enough. Then again, judging by the rat stories I've heard coming out of ECW at the time, he's probably right. Jenna Jameson appeared at the Dudley Boys at Hardcore Heaven 97. Joel Gertner had a heart attack. Jasmine St. Clair, a porn star famous for a fake gangbang and dating the Blue Meanie, she did it. She appeared more than a few times, actually later started her own promotion where people didn't get paid, but what a cunt. I don't know. Billy Corgan, long before buying the 7-year-old lemon that is the NWA, did an angle in ECW with Steve Corino, which I'm 80% sure is about Corgan being jealous of Corino's hair. Fred Durst did an angle with Steve Corino in ECW and was an unlockable character in the WWF SmackDown Just Bring It game, because that made sense back then. Then we get to the 2000s, where wrestling had sort of died down. It wasn't as popular anymore, especially when you get into 2002, 2003. Jorge Paez. Who's Jorge Paez? I don't know. Apparently he's a boxer, as far as Wikipedia says. Now, if you're a big boxing fan, you think I've just insulted the great Jorge Paez, sorry, but I'll be honest with you. He showed up and he appeared with Rey Mysterio No Way Out 2004 one time, and I'll be honest with you, there were times where I'm not sure Jorge Paez knows who Jorge Paez is, but he was a celebrity in some regard. Drew Carey appeared once in the Royal Rumble in 2001, so of course he's in the Hall of Fame. There was more than a few appearances by a particular orange-skinned New York asshole. Wonder what happened to him. Billionaire Mark Cuban, famous from Shark Tank, owning the Dallas Mavericks, and just being an all-around basically lunatic, has been RKO'd by Randy Orton and put through a table by Sheamus. You don't see many billionaires doing that. Someone tell Warren Buffett to man up, okay? Not many billionaires are like, I'll be put into a table by a big Irish bastard. Yeah, Britney Spears' baby daddy and literally nothing else, Kevin Federline, has a pinfall win over John Cena. I just want to put that out there. Just think about that. Let that settle. Football bad boy and strip club nightmare Adam Pac-Man Jones appeared in TNA and actually held the tag team titles with Ron the Truth Killings, despite the fact that he wasn't legally allowed to get physically involved. So Truth would work the entire match, and Jones would, and I'm not making this up, throw money at them to make it rain, and that was his finish. He threw cash at people, which was the same thing that caused the problem in a strip club, which got him arrested and suspended from the Tennessee Titans. TNA would do anything for a star. Speaking of TNA doing anything for a celebrity, Survivor star Jenna Maraska appeared in TNA in 2009 and wrestled the worst match in all of humanity against Sharmell. Neither one of them should have been in that match. That match should not have existed. I don't know what they were. I can't even talk. I cannot even talk about how awful this match. If you have never seen it, Brian Alvarez does a famous critique of it, -5 stars, and I think he's being generous there. I think he only gave -5 because theoretically he couldn't think of a lower number in their scale. And there's been other bad matches, but this was just horrible. Couldn't work. She couldn't do nothing. She couldn't bump. She couldn't get in the ring without giving everyone chlamydia. I don't know what happened there, but it was awful. But that's TNA. TNA's, of course, there's Toby Keith. And now, one thing that's going to be big about this is I'm not mentioning musical acts. You know, Kid Rock and Kiss and Metallica, Motorhead. If I did that, or Limp Bizkit, or Motley Crue, or whatever, if I mentioned the musical acts, this episode would be 4 hours long. There's a lot of musical acts, and of course, there's Machine Gun Kelly getting powerbombed off the stage by Kevin Owens, retroactively, probably an Eminem fan. But can't do that for every celebrity, and maybe I'll get to the music some other time. But for now, I just wanted to sit and do just on the celebrities and how they. Now, of course, I didn't mention everybody. If I mentioned everybody, again, either A, I'd miss somebody, which I did. I'm sure I missed people. I didn't mention some people because, quite frankly, I don't give a crap about them. It's my show. I don't know. There are some people that wrestled matches at WrestleMania, including like Snooki from Jersey Shore. I don't care enough to do a segment on her. I don't care. Whatever. She did a cartwheel. But I'm not. By no means is this a comprehensive list. This is just the list I can think of. But that's how wrestling treats celebrities, how they bring them in. Now, wrestling right now is their viewership is down, but their revenues are up because of things like the network. So the celebrities you see, they're not going to be top notch. I mean, they're just not, but there's going to be some now and again, and they're going to come in. I mean, of course, there's always the guest hosts who were there for one show to promote whatever they were doing. Famously, of course, the Summerfest comment by Jeremy Piven, something like that. You know, people are just, they don't know the product, they're there to promote their thing, and that's what the guest GM thing did. But outside of that, these are just the people that played, I guess, bigger roles, and so I just want to do that episode. If you have an idea for an episode, submit it. Our new Twitter, it's called Exploder-Pod. It's our logo for the picture. That's our new Twitter. So if you want to do something on Twitter, if you want to go on this page, if you want to go through ZTO, whatever you want to do, let me know if you have any ideas for episodes, any concept, any things I haven't missed, or any facts I've got wrong. Anything that you want to talk about, bring it on. I would gladly talk about it, and maybe it'll be in a future episode. So until next time, my name's Dan. This is Exploder. Have a good one.
There's only one thing that I hate, 'cause it's a bunch of crap. I hate rap. 51. Hey, I don't have any. Bobby! What? I said 51, that's 52. Bobby, come on, Bobby. There's only one thing that I hate, 'cause it's a bunch of crap. I hate rap. There's only one thing that I hate, 'cause it's a bunch of crap. I hate rap. Rap is crap. Rap is crap.